Alright, g'day guys, welcome back to another video. Coming at you from the studio. I've got my camera set up behind the double monitor, that's why it's a high angle. But I wanted to run you guys through fasting today. Obviously, I'm a huge advocate of fasting and I've talked about it in previous content, but now within Catholic liturgical year, we're coming into the period of Lent, or the Great Lent, or the Great Fast, which is in preparation of Easter. So I wanted to run through some of the physical and practical aspects of fasting and what we should be aware of, what we should be doing, perhaps some suggested practices, as well as a bit of an overview on the spiritual background, the spiritual mindset, and how to really get the most out of this period possible. I talked about it in one of my reels today, which I haven't posted yet, but it's a hugely, under-addressed thing within Lent and within Christian tradition. Like you always hear at Mass or during these sermons is like the three pillars of Lent, which is prayer, almsgiving, and fasting. But to be honest, I don't think any of them are talked about properly. Like, do we even get told what to do in terms of praying extra within Lent, aside from the Stations of the Cross, which I'm a huge advocate of? Almsgiving, yeah, sure, tell me what to do. I might already be giving to the church. And fasting, I mean, I was reading over Canon 1251, which says that as a bare minimum, we're required to do fasting and abstinence on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. But aside from that, all Fridays throughout the year is only abstinence. So abstinence from meat or some other food is still mandated by the church, but it basically says you can pick. But not only that, sure, that can still be present within canon law, but I just don't think this is a tradition that's really practiced much by Catholics anymore. You know, really taking the Friday as like a mini Good Friday within our normal weeks. And with each Friday, we are commemorating Christ's Passion. We are uniting ourselves to the cross. We are practicing fasting and self-denial. And I think it really helps to grow spiritually and in maturity and in imitation of the cross to practice fasting outside of Lent. But all of that being said, here's like a good look, in-depth look at fasting as we go into the Great Fast. So, dual purpose. Obviously nowadays there's a lot of research and stuff coming out about fasting, intermittent fasting, what it achieves within the body. I thought I'd speak to this briefly. Autophagy is a process that basically your body eats damaged or corrupted cells within you. So that's why fasting is such a good, cure or thing that helps mitigate the symptoms of cancer, because it will literally eat your cancerous cells. But autophagy only initiates when you are in a fasted state or in a ketogenic state. So most people, because they're eating all the time, they're eating junk food, processed foods, heaps of sugar, they never actually reach this point of autophagy. So when we fast, we do. Now this is a response that's mostly found in men, but when men fast, we actually get an increased testosterone and human growth hormone response to being in a fasted state. And that's why a lot of people will anecdotally report having more mental clarity, feeling more creative, like they're more interiorly aware. All of that stuff comes with that silencing of the flesh and that emptying kind of purification of the body. Spiritual benefits. Of course, it brings silence to the soul. You can only really have interior stillness and physical stillness. And while physical stillness should be like physical silence, it should be, taking an intentional space and time to pray. When we stop eating, we also cultivate that physical silence within us. So not only is it a helpful tool to grow spiritually, interiorly, but as Catholics, we also believe that we're able to offer fasting as intercessory suffering. So we can offer a fast for our wives, for our families, for our children, for people away from the faith, for souls who have no one to intercede for them, which could be the souls in purgatory. So there's many reasons why we should fast. I think one final point is just because it's been a staple of Christian tradition, like all the way from the start. If you read the Didache, it talks about like mandated fasting for all members of the lay faithful. We look at Christ himself, who fasted 40 days in the desert before going into his public ministry. You know, this is commonplace. This is our Christian tradition to fast. Hunger is your most constant sensation. You know, we wake up, we eat, we work a few hours, we eat, we're hungry. We wake up hungry, we're hungry all the time. By denying this fundamental appetite all day, you can't really ignore it. And that's where I think fasting is also very special, in the sense that it forces control and command of the will over the body than any other discipline. A cold shower, you get in there, turn it off, and you're out. It's done. It's over. A workout, it's hard in the moment, but you finish the workout and it's done. You go and recover. You cool down. You warm down. If you're fasting and you're perpetually hungry, it's very difficult to ignore. Like, obviously you can kind of distract yourself with your work and stuff. And I'm going to talk about this a bit later, but it's just such a fundamental human experience to experience hunger. And Christ himself experienced that in his passion too. Fasting plus silence equals breakthrough. So yeah, delete the food, and I think your mind and soul enter a different phase. The body is quieted, mental acuity peaks, creativity is up. And here's where I also suggest combining fasting periods with silence from social media, music, and podcasts. Try and cut down your consumption of these things. And that really helps amplify the good effects of fasting. What would be some Christian history of fasting throughout time? So as I mentioned before, the Didache around 100 AD was fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays all year round. So weekly Wednesday and Friday fast. And Lent intensified this period. Now this was for ages 7+. The desert monks, St. Athanasius, talking about St. Anthony, said, "He ate once a day after sunset, sometimes once in 2 days, and often even once in 4 days. His food was bread and salt, his drink water only." Multi-fast days were standard: bread, salt, water, raw vegetables only. Now this is something that we'll see when we talk about the Eastern Orthodox fasts, but what we do now, which is just abstinence from meat, would have been considered a really nice way to fast, because back in the day, they wouldn't even have oil. Like, they would stick to bread, water, and vegetables. They wouldn't have food products. They wouldn't have lard, for example. So any of these sort of highly nutritious, calorie-dense foods, they would also eliminate, even if they weren't animal products or meat. Medieval period, 6th to 13th century. The Synod of Benevento, 1091. All the faithful are bound to observe the Lenten fast, with 1 meal a day, taken afternoon prayer at 3 p.m, and abstinence from flesh meat. So required of everyone capable was 1 meal a day at 3 p.m. or later, and no meat for the entirety of Lent. The rule of St. Columbanus, so the Irish monk: during Lent, food is taken in the evening, and that sparingly, so that when one rises from the table, he will still be hungry. I think that's a great principle to keep in mind, that it's not like we're trying to eat as much as possible and recover all of our calories whenever we do allow ourselves to eat. Obviously, for me, for example, like when I fast throughout the year, I will try and, for example, if I'm trying to put on weight, I'm trying to bulk, if I am going to be fasting 1 or 2 days a week, it usually means that I'm going to have to focus more on the days that I can eat, so I can try level out my average calories. But during Lent, you're really trying to remain hungry. You're trying to remain in that mortified state. So whether that be 1 meal a day or some smaller meals a day, you kind of have to maintain that hunger. So when you rise from the table, you will still be hungry. Pre-1966 Catholic. So in the 1917 Code of Canon Law, so this was literally just less than 100 years ago when this was still practiced, days of fast and abstinence are all weekdays of Lent. So from ages 21 to 59, so basically anyone traditionally able-bodied Every Lent weekday was only one meal plus two snacks that combined are smaller than the meal. No meat on any weekday of Lent. And every Friday throughout the year was no meat. So that's definitely like a lot more than what most people do now. Trappist monks, complete silence, wake at 3:15 a.m., 7 prayer hours daily. Lent equals one meal at night, bread and vegetables only. No meat ever, not just Lent. And manual labor in the fields. This continued through Vatican II reforms. So the lay people throughout the 20th century were still basically on one meal a day, but they got two little smaller meals. And it was definitely this emphasized period of we're fasting consistently throughout Lent, not just on Fridays, even within Lent. Now, Eastern Orthodox, continuous through the current, I actually found this out a bit when I was listening to Brendan Wirch, I think is his name. He's a American ex-bodybuilder who became Eastern Orthodox, and he was talking about, going to the gym while you're fasting. And I learned that they still practice quite, well, apparently it's called here the Typicon. So they call it the Great Lent or the Great Fast, which I think is a great way to kind of talk about Lent, because Lent by itself, we kind of just imagine it as this intensified period of prayer where you have to give something up. But the Great Lent and the Great Fast, to me, that sounds a lot more intentional and a lot more focused than just Lent. Now, they practice no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no fish, no oil, basically nothing except bread and vegetables and water throughout the entire 40 days. And this is for everyone, married men with kids, monks, priests, and they still practice this in the present day. So that would definitely be difficult to get calories in. The Mount Athos monks do one meal daily year round. And during Lent, they'll eat that at the end of the day: bread, olives, vegetables, water. And oil is forbidden most of Lent. And this has been a practice that is ongoing for thousands of years. So that definitely sort of puts it into perspective. It's like our modern idea of fasting is so cut down. And I also feel that we remove some of the spiritual importance of it. So I'm definitely sort of taking a hard look at me going into Lent and saying, okay, well, I've been practicing a certain amount of these fasting disciplines in my life so far, and during Lent, how am I going to push myself to step that up one level? Because in some sense, even though I find it difficult now, it's also comfortable, or I guess a better word would be achievable for me. So what's something that's actually going to push me, to make it difficult and challenging for me? So when I was thinking about this presentation, I basically put together 4 different levels of what you could consider as a protocol for your fasting in Lent. Now, you might find yourself, as you listen to these, it'll be like, okay, I'm currently at level 1 or level 2. My encouragement to you is to go up a level. So if you're at level 2, I'm going to challenge you to do level 3 this Lent. If you're at level 0, start with level 1. If you're at level 1, go up to level 2. Level 1, never fasted before. Fast every Friday through the duration of Lent, and carry this through after Lent. So you should be skipping breakfast and ideally skip lunch. If you're only able to skip breakfast, have a small smoothie or a light meal at lunchtime, and then you can finish with a regular sized dinner. And also abstain from meat on Friday. I like to have like a bland meal that's still nutritious. So for example, on most Fridays, I will usually just do rice and eggs and then finish with a glass of milk. So just keeping it basic, still feeding my body, but I'm not having like a, extravagant, fish dinner or, eating throughout the day or whatever. Just trying to keep that spirit of simplicity and penance. Level 2, you could still only fast on Friday, but you're eating absolutely nothing aside from black coffee right until 3 p.m. as a minimum. So 3 p.m. is the hour that our Lord died, on the 3rd hour. So that's the significance behind that time, and that's why I really encourage people to fast till at least that time, because it gives it a bit more spiritual meaning. So you can have a small meal after 3 p.m. if you really need to, and then you just have dinner. And if you can, stretch out the fast all the way to dinner. And that would be once a week. Level 3, copy what you did on level 2 to both Wednesday and Friday. So both days you will fast till 3 p.m. Meat is allowed on Wednesday if you wish, but Friday is definitely no meat. So there's 2 days where you're not eating till at least 3 p.m. or the evening. What I sometimes do is I'll practice this on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. So there's 2 days where I'm eating a little bit more in between, and then I'm going into my next fasting day. But that's really up to you. But at a minimum, you're still fasting 2 days. Finally, level 4. Vegetarian all of Lent, no meat, and eat absolutely nothing throughout the whole day for Friday. So that would be no food from Thursday night right until Saturday morning. This was traditionally done the first Friday of each month as the Sacred Heart devotion, or they called it like a black fast, where you're just not eating anything. Black coffee, green tea, water, no calories either through liquid or food. You'd also do this on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. It's a great way to start and finish the Great Fast. So level 4 would be doing that for Fridays, and you can do 1 meal a day all throughout Lent, and or vegetarian all of Lent. And Triduum for advanced, although I recommend everyone to give this a go, this is traditionally like the Triduum fast or the Holy Week fast, where you wouldn't eat from Holy Thursday through to the Easter Vigil. So no food at all Friday and all of Saturday until after the Saturday Easter Vigil. What could you eat, or what should you eat during the fast? So this is kind of based on the vegetarian, although you can apply this also to your Wednesdays and Fridays. Single ingredient foods only, nutrient dense. You can get some high protein pasta. You know, they make these really good ones that are made out of like chickpeas and lentils and peas. So it's still fairly good tasting pasta. Beans, lentils, vegetables, fruits, eggs and milk. Fish is permitted on Friday unless you're fasting from meat all of Lent. Basically what I encourage is stick to low dopamine meals. So you're not having this super fancy steak or this delicious fish dinner, but you're just going to have some basic mince, rice. Just keep it simple. Overall, you want to cultivate the spirit of penance and eliminate junk food, of course, processed foods, sweets, chocolate. Just because you're fasting from meat doesn't mean that you get to eat all of this other stuff, which is like still luxury food. Mount Athos standard, bread and fruit is the ascetic baseline. Meal structure, 3 to 5 go-to meals, rotate between them, eat the same thing every day if needed. It removes the kind of food obsession, thinking about food and cooking, and you can leave your mind free for prayer instead of meal planning. So just get that out of the way, pick some meals, cook them at the start or prepare it ahead of the week. And as I'll go into now, or after this slide, is that fasting should always be accompanied by prayer. So instead of just fasting and working more, or fasting and scrolling on your phone, it's fasting accompanied with prayer. Example meals: chickpea pasta with vegetables, bean and rice bowl with salsa and avocado, vegetable stir fry, lentil soup, bread, oatmeal. Basically all of these meals you can add in some fried eggs or some scrambled eggs. Yogurt is fantastic. Try and get as much protein as you can. The body still needs fuel. It's unlikely that you're going to hit like your protein targets, like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. But try your best, and if you are only going to be fasting like a Friday or a Wednesday and a Friday, make sure that you do focus on hitting those targets on the other days. Training during fasts. You're not going to maintain your peak performance. You know, this isn't your PR season. You're basically going on maintenance mode for the body, but you're going on a spiritual bulk. So what I recommend for people is to basically maintain your training frequency as best as possible. I don't think it's a bad idea to maybe cut down 1 or 2 days a week. Maybe you're going to go from 6 to 4 or from 5 to 4. but definitely keep that volume up and keep pushing the intensity, but just don't expect to have these amazing workouts or you're feeling super energetic or whatever. What you can do is you can have a bit more mobility work, have longer warm-ups, technique refinement, stretching, ice baths. Keep the physical disciplines up. And yeah, use that save time for prayer. One other thing that I was going to add while training, and this also applies to manual labor, is that I think people also overestimate, I guess, how much it will affect you. Like, I definitely struggled at the start, but even being a dairy farmer and back in the day doing like pretty intense powerlifting training, even on my fasting days, I was able to perform basically the same as when I was eating. That doesn't mean that it felt the same. It definitely felt worse. It felt harder. I would have to take things a wee bit slower, but overall, and this isn't just my like testimony, but you read He Leadeth Me by Father Walter Shizek, all of these books where prisoners would do incredible amounts of manual labor, incredible feats of strength on eating a morsel of bread every day for years. So us as healthy young men who have been eating like prime purebred stallions majority of the year and training hard, we have more than enough gas in the tank to go a full day without eating and being able to perform on the job site or in the gym. So also don't blow it out of proportion. That being said, if you haven't done it before, it is going to feel hard, but I encourage you to persevere, focus on hydration, have a coffee, and just do the work. Outside of fasting periods, you can focus on that performance, get on the bulk, pursue the strength, but within the fasting periods, we're eating clean, we're eating less, and we're focusing on Christ. As I said before, something that you can do is make up missed calories on other days. It doesn't mean doing like a dirty bulk or eating like a pig, but intentionally adding a few eggs, adding a few meals, adding the protein bar, so you can keep the weekly average up. But the actual fast days will involve real hunger. Accept the performance dip. Come out of Lent with a renewed relationship to training, which serves God and our vocation, not our egos or our vanity. So finishing up here, as I said, keep the frequency up, adjust the intensity, and I recommend, especially as we are in the Lenten period, to use that extra time, or even if you don't find that you have much extra time, try and intentionally give yourself more prayer time and more reading time, especially scripture. And you should have a bit of a rule of life set out for this period. It's like, okay, I usually read one chapter of the Gospels every morning and I do 20 minutes of silent prayer. Okay, I'm going to aim for 25 minutes of silent prayer, gospel and a meditation, or 2 chapters or 3 chapters, but do something extra where you're actually spending that time in contemplation or in meditation or in scripture, but really kind of make it a renewal of commitment to the interior life. Pre-decision removes options, so commit before the day starts. Commit now at the beginning of Lent. Don't just change the program halfway through or when it feels hard. Your base disciplines are non-negotiables. Final slide, mindset for execution, second to last. This is key, guys, because as I've said in many videos, doing the physical disciplines will not necessarily equal in the virtue. If I'm having cold showers and I'm just looking forward to my next hot shower, or envisioning the hot shower, or wanting to get out of there as soon as possible, if I'm counting down the minutes or the hours till I can have my next meal within the fast, interiorly, I'm not really with it. I want to sit in the friction. I want to practice mentally sitting in the pain. And that's where you really make the interior growth. If you're constantly looking for the way out, you're just white knuckling it through, sure, it's going to have some benefit, but nowhere near as much if you actually fully embrace it, if you actually carry that cross, if you actually meet Christ within that suffering, within that hunger, within the cold shower, within the hard workout. That's how we imitate Christ, and that's how we truly get to know him, is in that suffering where we're not just running away or wanting to drop the cross as soon as we can, but we're actually sitting there in that moment. So it's going to be hard, but as we go into these fasting periods and these periods of prolonged hunger, practice that mental presence within the suffering. That's the biggest recommendation I have. And that's, I think, how you will find that the fasting actually bears real fruit within your life. Bottom line, as I've said a couple of times throughout the presentation, is that prayer and fasting always go together. There's this Orthodox priest who I heard a sermon from once, and he said that fasting without prayer is demonic. Perhaps not so extreme as that, but I think the whole point of fasting is to lead to renewed depth of prayer, and is to lead, again, with unity with Christ and unity with God's will. So as we go into this period of physical fasting, it's really a commitment that we make to the interior life, to our faith. So always keep that in mind as we go forwards. And as Christ said in the Gospels, there's some demons who are only cast out by prayer and fasting. Demons fear this combination more than anything else, because not only are we denying our flesh and mortifying the senses, but with prayer, we are also aligning ourselves with God, and we are clinging to Jesus Christ. And it basically, I guess in a spiritual sense, it makes us untouchable if we're truly practicing this with fidelity and devotion. So that's all I have for you. Crack into it. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if there's anything else you need in the comments. I'm going to drop a few videos on some of the resources that I used for this, some of the things that have helped me, but ultimately go hard. Find another person to do it with, or find an accountability group. As I said at the front end of the call, I initially presented this to the Fit for the Kingdom members. So if you want to join a group like that or a community like that, please message me or go to the links in the bio, and you can find a group of guys to grow in the faith and grow in mind, body, and soul with. But with that, I'll leave you to it. Have a great Lent, and God bless you.